Well, they fixed that one that would be for me.
They had their.
Yes, it's now an overpass.
Oh, the red bug. No. You mean the 1792 436? Yes, yeah. That flyover does help. Yeah. Okay. So good evening, and welcome to the beginning of our second part of our Mishnah class, which does not pick up where we left off. So for our returning students, you remember we were doing brachot, which is the very first section of Mishnah in the entire Mishnah. And the rest of that section of Mishnah is all about agricultural laws, which, as most of us are not farmers, it would be learning more about agriculture than it would be learning about halakha. So we'll maybe someday we'll come back to that. And in a similar way, Shabbat and Eruvin, the two next sections that begin this section called Moed, which deals with holidays and special times. Shabbat is very, very technical, and there are great things to learn from Mishnah Shabbat, but many of the terms are very technical to the culture of the ancient world when they're talking about different devices and different technologies. Again, if you don't know them personally, you may not get the implication for Shabbat. And Eruvin has to do with creating of an eruv, a mixed area that allows carrying for community. And again, much of the details are very technical to do with the architecture of the day, how the alleys and courtyards and everything worked. So I figured, and with the consent of our students, Pesachim, our next section, would be much more familiar-ish. There's going to be some parts that are very, very different from what we know of Pesach, but I think it's close enough to what we know that we can focus on the content more than the culture that was creating it. Sound good? Excellent. So, Pesach. Before we get into this, what is Pesach?
It's a holiday in the spring that commemorates the Exodus from Egypt.
Okay, holiday in the spring, the first holiday of the Jewish calendar, right? Pesach is considered to be the first holiday, which is why it is first in the list after Shabbat, which is the real first holiday. And it's in the springtime, and it commemorates the Exodus from Egypt, and it is celebrated how? What are the main mitzvot, the main commandments?
You eat matzah. That's the main.
No.
No?
You have to rephrase it. Remember, precision, precise language. Do you have to eat matzah for 7 days?
You have to remove the lemon.
Okay, you have to get rid of the chametz. Whether you eat matzah or not, after the Seder, which we're going to talk about in just a second, is entirely up to you. If you want to eat matzah at the Seder and then eat fruit for the rest of the week, that's okay, right? But you can't eat chametz, right? And we're going to go ahead and just use the transliteration for clarity's sake. Chametz is generally referred to as leaven or leavening, and it is one of the species of grain that has risen, that has been allowed to be mixed with water and then to begin the expansion process. And all of that has to be removed, and none of it can be eaten during Pesach, right? So you have to get rid of it, and you have to not eat it. What else is the main mitzvah of Pesach?
Seder. We eat the maror.
Okay, so the other main mitzvah-ish is the Seder. But the Seder, or the Seder, depending upon your Ashkenazic or Sephardi pronunciation, the Seder is actually a little weird because this isn't the mitzvah, right? The Seder isn't the mitzvah. The Seder is how we do a certain mitzvah, or two mitzvahs actually. One of them is the telling, right? You will tell your children. That's one of the mitzvahs. And the other mitzvah is the korban, is the Passover sacrifice. All right, that's what the Torah talks about. Get rid of and don't eat the chametz. Do a telling while you have the korban, the Passover sacrifice. Surprise, surprise, that's going to be the main focus of the Mishnah. And we're not going to get to what we're familiar of with the Seder, the actual home ritual around the table, telling and all of that. We're not going to get that until the final chapter. So if you think that the Mishnah is going to spend all of its time talking about how to do the Haggadah, come back in a few weeks. We've got other business to attend to because we have to deal with the core parts of the mitzvah: the leavening and getting rid of it and not eating it, and the korban, the sacrifice itself. Okay, down to work then. Everyone got a copy of the first chapter here? Yes. Good. Volunteer. Chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Everyone's looking at Judy.
I guess I'm
Would you like to carry on
volunteering
reading? You've been volunteered by your peers.
Yeah. Start at Mishnah 1.
Yes.
Part 1. On the evening of the 14th of Nisan, they searched the house for chametz by the light of a lamp.
Okay. We're doing what now? So remember when we began brachot, when it began with the question of, when do you get to say the evening Shema? It began with the assumption that you already knew about this mitzvah. Same here. It thinks you already know when Passover is, which is going to be the evening of the 15th, and it thinks you already know that you're supposed to be getting rid of chametz. So all that's left to do is to tell you when to do the getting rid of the chametz and how to do it. So that's what we're starting with. So on the evening of the 14th, this is the evening before Passover, right? This is the night before Passover. You search the house for chametz by the light of a lamp, right? And in modern parlance, we call this bedikat chametz, the search for chametz. Sound good?
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar, exactly. And you go from room to room checking. Which rooms? Next Mishnah, or next part of the Mishnah, I should say.
Every place into which chametz is not brought does not require searching.
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't put a paragraph there. That 3 should be on the next line. Right, so part 2, every place into which chametz is not brought does not require searching. Does anyone want to put that into no double negative language?
Search only where you normally would bring food.
Right. Chametz, right? You only need to search where chametz goes. So if there are rooms in your house, in your dominion, your domain, that you never take chametz, do you need to search them?
Not really.
No. So if you never eat in room X, like for example, you probably, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to judge, maybe you never eat in your bathroom, right? And you never bring chametz into your bathroom, you don't need to search your bathroom, right? Maybe you have a study, and in your study with all of your books, you never bring food because it's, you never want to bring food in that study. You don't need to study, you don't need to search your study. Right now, if you're like me and you always have something to eat or nibble or whatever, then yeah, you've got to be searching your study too. But it depends upon where you bring chametz, not just what rooms exist. And this is going to make a big difference depending upon the kind of house you have. It's a lot less work. And notice that they're saying that you're searching for the chametz the night before. Nowadays, how early in advance of Pesach do people begin the cleaning for Pesach?
A month.
A month, at least a week, maybe,
Yeah.
We do a lot more than what they're describing. Now, part of that is because our houses are bigger, right? So in a house in ancient Israel would probably be maybe about the size of this room, right? The whole house would be this big. And there'd be an area for people to sleep, and there'd be an area for food preparation, and that'd be the same area where you're eating probably, and there'd be lots of storage areas. That's it. You don't have a living room, you don't have the den, and then also have the rumpus room and have the study room. Maybe if you were very, very rich, you'd have a big palace like that. But most people, they had a place where they could sleep that they wouldn't get rained on. That was it. Doesn't take long to search that. And most people did not have huge cabinets full of food. They didn't have big areas where they would be eating. It doesn't take long to search when you've got nothing to look through. So searching the night before, this was probably the beginning and the end of their preparation and cleaning for Pesach. Right? One good search, that was enough. Kind of seems simple. On the other hand, remember, it was simple because their life was so poor. So it may be attractive when we're thinking about cleaning. It's not so attractive for the other 51 weeks of the year. Okay, onward.
So why did they rule 2 rows of the wine cellar must be searched? This is actually a place into which chametz might be taken.
Okay, so you've got a wine cellar, and most people would have had a place that they could put jugs and jars of wine, or casks if they had a lot of wine. And they said, so the Mishnah is already bringing a question about itself, which is saying, wait, if I only have to look where the chametz has been taken, who's bringing the sandwich into the cellar, right? When they go down to get the wine that they're bringing up to drink, I don't take sandwiches down in there. It's like your garden tool shed. Who takes sandwiches into the garden tool shed? But we've already been told, as far as the Mishnah knows, that you have to search 2 rows in the wine cellar. And that's going to be a question. So Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are going to ask us answer for us what does 2 rows mean. But to sort of get a basic idea, and I'm going to draw casks only because it's a lot easier to draw circles than it is to draw jugs. So you have to imagine you've got your casks. Yes, I'm not an artist. And then we're going to have...
Looks like a cylinder.
Yeah, it's cylinder-ish.
A barrel, yeah.
Right, it's a barrel, right?
Barrel, yeah.
So you've got 1 up, or 1, 2, 1, 2 across, and then these go back, right, into your cellar. And so there's a wall all around this, but there's rows and rows and rows that go deep into the cellar. And then you maybe at the front you would have 2 and 2 by 2. And so the question is, I have to search 2 rows of these. What does that mean? Right? Does that mean I search 1 and 2 all the way? Or does it mean I search 1 and 2 across the top? Let's see what Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai say.
Beit Shammai says 2 rows over the front of the whole cellar, but Beit Hillel says the 2 outer rows, which are the uppermost.
And so generally the interpretation is that Beit Shammai is saying the first option I mentioned, which is you search all of this row and you search all of that row, and that which would be 8 total casks. And Hillel is saying, no, you search the 4 that are facing on the outside, and you search the surface rows on the top, 1, 2. So it's like an L shape. You don't need to search these, because how is the food going to get there? Right? You need to search the top, and you need to search the fronting, just the covering part, not all the stuff in the back. Right? And of course, we all know Hillel wins. Beit Hillel wins. But it's an interesting question because ultimately we're talking about searching worth of 2 additional barrels, right, in the back. But we're also talking about moving a lot more to search, right? This, I might be able to crawl up and look down on these and search. These, I'm moving 6 wine casks out of the way to be able to search these. And so there is a different level of effort involved in the search. Make sense? Yes? Okay. Keeping with chametz, on to Mishnah 2.
Mishnah 2. They need not fear that a weasel may have dragged chametz from one room to another, or from one place to another, for if so, they must also fear from courtyard to courtyard and from town to town, and there would be no end to the matter.
Im kain ein ladavar sof is the phrase that's used in a number of places throughout rabbinic literature, which means if so, if you're going to do that, then ad infinitum, it'll be forever. You'll keep checking and checking and checking and checking. All right, so imagine you've just checked not just the cellar, but checked any room, and as you shut the door, you suddenly think, what if a weasel came through a crack in the wall with a piece of chametz? And so you open the door and you go back and check. Okay, no chametz, no weasel. Good. And you shut the door. What if now a weasel came in with a piece of chametz and you open the door and check? And then you shut the door. Okay, maybe now you see the problem? Right? So if you, the Mishnah is trying to say that there is a mitzvah, and it is a major mitzvah to get rid of the chametz. This is something that is considered to be a mega mitzvah within the Torah and within rabbinic literature. And they're basically saying, you could drive yourself crazy trying to do this mitzvah, and you would never be sure, because there might be a weasel. And if there's a weasel, what are you going to do, right? Even if the whole town was clear of chametz, no chametz in the whole town, the weasel could carry a piece of chametz from the other town into our town. And now we've got chametz in our town. And they said, don't worry about it, right? If you've checked the room is checked. And that's the mitzvah. And this is a major philosophical statement. Because there's two ways to judge the performance of this mitzvah. Right? One way is to judge the total absence of chametz. Right? The mitzvah says get rid of the chametz. Therefore, the fulfillment is the absence of chametz. Make sense? Right? The mitzvah is not fulfilled until the chametz is no longer present. But that creates this problem. Because if your fulfillment is the absence of the chametz, then you have to account for the possible reintroduction of chametz by an outside unknown force. And if you do that, how can you sleep at night? Right? You would have to be guarding your house 24/7. And even then, who knows what came in? And God forbid if you have children. I mean, kids, what was stuck to the bottom of your shoe? I mean, there's so many things that could happen that if your benchmark is the absence, you can never be assured that it's really 100% chametz free. Instead, they emphasize the first part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to get rid of the chametz. Did you check and get rid of the chametz? If you did the mitzvah. Even if the chametz came back, right? Even if the chametz came from another source, if you did your duty to fulfill the mitzvah, you have fulfilled the mitzvah, and everything else, that just happens. That's nature. There's a wonderful section in the very beginning of the Talmud for Pesach in the Gemara, highly recommended for a good laugh, where they take this Mishnah and they run with it. And they say, well, wait a minute. What if there was a mouse that was carrying a piece of chametz and a cat catches the mouse? And so you have a cat with a mouse with chametz. And they said, what if the mouse ran in with the chametz and came out with the chametz? Can you think that it's the same piece of chametz or the same mouse? Maybe it's a different mouse. Maybe he ran in with one piece, left it, and came out with a different piece that you'd missed. Or maybe the cat looks like he's carrying the mouse who was carrying the piece of chametz, but maybe it's a totally different mouse and the cat is carrying and a totally different piece of, and it's this wonderful whole series of hypotheticals, and they basically say at the end, forget it. Check your house and be done. Right? That's there are many teachings by the sages throughout the centuries about that first Mishnah, that you check with the light of a lamp, with a candle. And they say, well, why is it with a candle rather than with a torch? A torch gives off more light, right? And they're separate words in Hebrew. So why not use the bigger light for searching for chametz? And they basically say, if you use too big a light, you'll burn down your house. Right? Why not do it during the daytime? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, practical, which is that for most people in the ancient world, their house wasn't much brighter during the day than it was at night. Windows were not an option because they didn't have glass, or almost no one had glass. And so every hole you put in your wall meant that another weasel could come in. Now, every hole you put in your wall would let in cold air or let out hot air when it was the winter. So you didn't really want to put more holes in your building than you would just for the smoke out of the top. So daytime, it wasn't really that much brighter. And really, this is also done at the night because they want to do it, as we're going to see from the later Mishnahs, as close to Pesach as possible. Because otherwise, what are you eating? Right? If you're getting rid of your chametz, that means you're not going to be eating it. And you got to go a day now, kind of, we're going to talk about that soon, without chametz. So you don't really want to search earlier than you have to. So, but yes, as you know from the modern world, we do our cleaning, which is really searching. I mean, the cleaning we do really is the searching that they would have done. And then we do almost a ceremonial search for the chametz in the evening. And you'll see they're accustomed to, with a feather, with a spoon, with a candle. I mean, my kids and I, we love doing this. But if we only searched for chametz on that evening with a spoon and a candle, we'd be up all night. Well, actually, I mean, to be fair, it wouldn't be as bad, except for the kitchen, which, presumably we've gotten rid of the things that are in the pantry that are, definitely chametz. But the definition of what counts as chametz, it has been inflated in the modern world, right? So a chametz means it's an olive-sized crumb of chametz that is edible. That's the definition of what a chametz is that has to be gotten rid of. And for most of us, God willing, you live in a home that's clean enough that you don't leave bowls of Cheerios underneath the sofa in the living room that are there for 3 months. That you're going to look underneath there with your candle and go, oh, right, that loaf of bread I had. If you drop a few crumbs here, with kids you might, indeed. With kids you might, especially I remember being a teenager and college student. Food would sometimes be left by the side of the bed for extended periods of time. But for most of us who hopefully outgrow that or never went through it, we keep a house that doesn't have large amounts of food debris just lying around for the whole year. And so this cleaning for the mitzvah itself of getting rid of the chametz shouldn't be as hard as we've made it. There are reasons why it is. Some of it is culture and tradition. Some of it is because we are cleaning the surfaces that we have accumulated, whether they be our pots and our pans or our counters or our sinks and stoves and oven. All of the blessings of the modern world, all of our possessions, require a lot more cleaning and preparation. The ancient world, dirt floor, you brush it clean and you're done. It would have been a lot quicker. You got 3 pots, you scrub them down, you're good. So yes, we've got a lot more work now because we have a more materially rich society. But in the end, this is what's being asked for. Make sense? Okay, and it's a wonderfully humane teaching, because otherwise, in kain ein ladavar sof, you would go nuts. Just imagine in the modern world, if we still said that if we believed that chametz was any particle of bread product of this leavening, you would need to be going over all of your surfaces with a microscope. I mean, every inch of every counter of every floor, it would be impossible. If it was a chametz has to be 100% gone down to an atomic level, in kain ein ladavar sof, you would never be able to do it. Even if you started on the day after Passover, getting ready for next year.
We would have debates on just how small a particle does it count as chametz.
Absolutely, and indeed in the Gemara they do. They do talk what counts. And whether or not, when you're down to the molecule of the hydrocarbon that makes up the starch that is at the base of the bread, does that really count as chametz? I mean, yeah, it would be crazy. And what happens if it's missing a proton? It's exactly. And it's like, oh wait, I found 3 protons and 4 neutrons. Yeah, we don't, because the mitzvah is to get rid of the chametz, not to be 100% chametz free. Because 100% chametz free, we can never know. But we can know that I did 100% of my effort, of my work, and of what I should do to get rid of the chametz. And after that, as we're going to say, we disown, we disavow any possession that we may have missed. We say, I've done everything I should have, I've cleaned everything I should have, I've checked everywhere I should have. Anything that's left, I couldn't see it, so it's not mine. And that's kind of what we're going to pick up on Mishnah 3.
Mishnah 3. Rabbi Judah says, they search on the evening of the 14th and in the morning of the 14th and at the time of destroying.
All right, so what is Rabbi Yehuda adding from our last Mishnah?
2 more searches.
2 more searches, right? And that's actually going to be a bit of a problem, because he's saying, even if you searched last night, you have to search again in the morning. And even if you searched in the evening, you also have to search in the morning, and you also have to search at the time when it comes for what we call biur chametz, the destroying of any leftover chametz. That's 3 additional searches. Okay, sages, not so much. They disagree.
But the sages say, if he did not search in the evening of the 14th, he must search on the 14th. If he did not search in the morning of the 14th, he must search during the festival. If he did not search during the festival, he must search after the festival.
All right, so the sages said, wait. Okay, look, if you didn't do the search when you were supposed to, if you didn't search in the evening, then yeah, you can search in the morning. And if you haven't searched in the morning, then by the time the mid-morning comes along for the destruction of the chametz, then yes, you should search then. And if you didn't search at the time of the destruction, very, very naughty, then you're going to have to search during Pesach itself. Once Pesach has begun, you're still going to have to search and get rid of the chametz, right? Because you're not allowed, oh, I erased it. You're not allowed to own the chametz. You have to get rid of it. So if you haven't gotten rid of it yet, you still have to get rid of it. But what about that last part? The festival is already over. Why would I have to search after the festival? Kind of weird. Because isn't the mitzvah not to own chametz during the festival? I mean, I can have a loaf of bread after the festival, can't I? Yes and no. You can have a loaf of bread that you buy after Pesach. If you buy a loaf of bread before Pesach and keep it knowingly and willingly during Pesach, and it's still your possession, you are forbidden from, and so is every other Jew, from deriving benefit from that loaf after the holiday. Right? A known piece of chametz that is kept willingly and purposefully throughout the holiday of Pesach becomes forbidden forever, because you are benefiting from chametz that was supposed to be disposed of. So you have to search even after the holiday. You know, let's imagine, God forbid, you're in hospital, right? And so you can't search your house, and there's no one. It should be so bad. I mean, there's no one to help you go search for you or whatever. After the holiday, you're going to have to go and get rid of any of the chametz that was still there, because assuming you didn't find a way to sell it or dispose of it from your hospital bed, you owned it during Pesach, and that needs to be rectified. You know, you're in a coma. Let's imagine you're in a coma. You wake up from the coma. The first thing you think of is, oh my God, Pesach is over, and I didn't get rid of my chametz. You're going to have to rush home and search, and you're going to have to get rid of it, because it was owned by you during the holiday, and therefore it is forbidden to you and is forbidden to every other Jew.
Rabbi, this doesn't create like conflict, because we have this mechirat chametz, selling of the chametz.
Right.
It doesn't have a conflict with that? This sages, what the sages are saying?
Yes and no. So the mechirat chametz, the sale of the chametz, which is a common practice these days, was originally invented because there were certain merchants that had stockpiles of chametz that come Pesach. They couldn't just throw it into the bonfire. I mean, they would have been bankrupt every single year. And so they sold it officially, legally, but with a somewhat implied understanding that the sale would be reversed after the holiday in order to prevent the complete collapse of their businesses. It was controversial when it was first begun during the Middle Ages, but it does fit the technical criteria. You do not own it, and it is not in your possession, even though it may be on your property. Now, the same way that your friend could say, look, I'm going on vacation, could you keep my car in your garage? And you say, yeah, you can keep your car in my garage. Just because it's in my garage, I don't own the car, right? I'm not going to use the car because it's my friend's car, not mine. But it is under my roof. That's permitted. And it's permitted for chametz if you've sold it, so it's not your property. So yes, we have found that in the 20th and 21st century, with our material-rich culture, that the getting rid of every piece of chametz would be impossible without destroying much of our property. So to give you an example, you would not be able to have a toaster oven. Every year you'd have to get rid of your toaster oven for Pesach, because there's no way to kosher a toaster oven for Pesach. You would have to get rid of any earthenware, china-type ceramicware plates, which 90% of the plates that people use are made of these materials. They cannot be koshered for Pesach. There are embedded pieces of chametz in those plates. Many of our knives and forks and other cutlery have plastic handles that cannot be koshered of chametz. You would have to be getting rid of all of these every single year in our modern world. And that would be a problem. We have created such a complicated life that it actually means we have to also have a complicated instrument, the sale of the chametz, to remove it from our possession, even though it's still in our presence. And so what you do, as it's going to point out, is you put it away, you store it away, you make sure it can't be misused, you sell the chametz, which we do through Temple Israel if you're interested in going through this, and it's not yours even though it's still nearby. And it's important as a little caveat, because people often get confused about this. When you're selling your toaster oven or your toaster or whatever you're selling for your chametz, you're selling the chametz in it. You're not selling the toaster oven. It's a very important distinction. Because people have, one of the famous questions that I remember reading about was someone said, Rabbi, I sold my chametz and it was all in my garage, my toaster oven, my plates, my dishes, and all of that, and someone robbed my house. Can I tell the insurance company about the stuff in my garage? Because I didn't own it. So can I claim the loss for the insurance company? And the rabbi said, of course you can claim it, because the thieves stole your plates and someone else's chametz. Right? Now, it may be true that we can't get the chametz out of the plate, but technically speaking, when you sell your chametz, you're not selling the plate. You're selling the chametz that's stuck in the plate. And therefore, yes, you can absolutely make a claim on your insurance for the item that was stolen. You just can't claim the chametz for your insurance company. And if you owned a lot of chametz, if you owned a bakery or something, or a donut shop, that could be a big problem. But for the average person, it's not much of an issue. God forbid you're the owner of a bakery and it burns down during Pesach, you would be in kind of trouble. But for the average person, not an issue. Make sense? Good. Weiter. I believe we've got all the way down to part 3 of Mishnah 3.
Okay, part 3. And what he leaves over, he must put away in a hidden place so that he should not need searching after it.
This is called breakfast. I remember last night we searched. This morning, I'm going to need to eat something. And unlike nowadays where we have a whole variety of all sorts of gluten-free things that we can have for breakfast, back then, breakfast, lunch, dinner, bread, and bread. That was the main source of food and of life. So what am I going to eat if I did my search? And so what you do is you take what you're going to eat in the morning, you set it to one side and it's hidden or put away during the search. You know where it is. You're not going to have to go looking for it later. And you do the search, and then in the morning you take it out, you eat it, you're fine. Make sense?
Sounds really familiar again.
Well, yeah, this should begin to sound, the wine cellar, maybe we don't do so much of these days. And the weasels, God willing, we don't have weasels in our house. But these steps of searching on the evening before, of saving what you're going to be having for breakfast, of bringing it out, and then as we're going to see the destroying of it, of the leftover chametz, that should be everybody's annual experience already. And if it isn't, let me know and I can help you do it next year. Okay. What time is it? Yeah, we got time, plenty of time. Bags of time. Chapter 1, Mishnah 4.
Mishnah 4. Rabbi Meir says, one may eat chametz the whole of the 5 hours and must burn it at the beginning of the 6th.
Go ahead and do Rabbi Yehuda, because it's just going to be tit for tat.
And Rabbi Yehuda says, one may eat the whole of the 4 hours, suspend it the whole of the 5th, and must burn it at the beginning of the 6th.
All right, so we got some technical terms here that we need to clarify. The first is the word hour. I know, everybody thinks, oh, I know what an hour is. No, you don't. Right? We normally, nowadays, we say an hour is 60 minutes, right? That's true 2 times a year. Right? According to
In
Judaism,
modern times.
what's that?
It's true in modern times after the invention of clocks.
Well, it depends what you mean by hour. Right? As far as Judaism is concerned, we just read about this a few weeks ago in Bereshit. What did God give us to tell time? The sun.
and the moon.
The sun, the moon, and the stars. Right? The sun tells us the hours. The moon tells us the day. The stars tell us the season. And that's absolutely true. You get good at it, you can tell exactly what month it is by the stars. You can tell what day it is by the moon. And you can tell what hour it is by the sun. So what's the problem with 60 Minutes? Well, not the TV show. Sorry, 2 times a year. The problem is that the way Judaism says an hour is 1/12 of daylight.
Do we count hours during the dark?
What? We count watches during the dark. The night was divided into the watches of the Shomrim, of the watchmen. And really, hours didn't matter because what were you doing? You were sleeping. And also because without the sun, who knew? They kept track of time in their own ways, and they divided the watch into 3 or 4 segments throughout the ancient world, all over the world. It was daytime that mattered. And daytime was a relative hour. So in the winter, your hours were short. And in the summer, your hours were long. And on the equinox, twice a year, your hours were 60 minutes. You would have 12 hours of daylight, and therefore each hour would be 60 minutes. But for most of the year, your hours would be more or less than that 60-minute mark. And quite honestly, in the days before clocks and before watches, it meant all you had to do to know what time it is look up at the sun. And you could tell where the sun was, and that would tell you how long it was until lunchtime. You know, the sun's about there, lunchtime is there, okay, I've got that much time. It's very straightforward. And beautifully designed, the day worked out well. In the summer, when you needed more time to do more for all of your harvest and gathering and preparing, God gave you more hours. Well, he didn't give you more hours, he gave you longer hours. And in the winter, when there wasn't as much to do, God gave you shorter hours. You can get home early. You know, you could, and you know, the little sermonette, you know, slaving ourselves to a 60-minute watch has completely divorced us from the natural cycles of the world. And it has created a perpetual sameness for many, many people in their life. And it also has created a grind in life where every day has the same pattern, the same rhythm, the same style, and that wears us down more than the variety that comes from having your day interpreted by the sun. Excuse me, throat's going for some reason. So now we know what an hour is. An hour is 1/12 of the amount of daylight for that time, which is going to be a little different every year because Pesach does move according to the solar calendar, even though it's the same according to the lunar. So now that we know what an hour is, 1/12 of your daytime, what do we do for the eating of chametz, our breakfast time? What does Rabbi Meir say?
Rabbi Meir says you may eat
5
chametz
hours.
the whole of the 5 hours. So I guess that's the first 5 hours of daylight.
First 5 hours, which means you're going from dawn. Let's call that 1, 2, 3, 4. Need a longer line. 5. Right? And remember, what's lunchtime? What's midday?
Noon.
Right. 6. Right. So that's going to be noon, which may or may not be the 12 that we think of as 12, but that's going to be noon when the sun is straight overhead. So he's saying first 5 hours, eat up. No problem. You can eat chametz all during those 5 hours. And then at the beginning of the 6th,
To get rid of it.
Then you burn it.
right. So you eat up till here, and then you burn. Eat and burn. Make sense? We see his pattern? Rabbi Yehuda, what's the difference?
You can only eat it for the
4.
first 4 hours.
Okay, he says eat here, and then what does he add?
Suspend it. Don't eat.
Suspended?
For the
In
fourth
the
to the
fifth suspended.
Okay, so you end up with, you're eating here, right? And then you're suspending there, and then they agree burning on the 6th. Suspend?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, remember all the way back to Brachot, when we talked in our very first Mishnah about what time it is for Shema, right, for the evening. What time do you actually have to do Shema? The full last measure of the law, do or die. This is your final opportunity. What's the limit?
9.
The morning.
Yeah.
You can do Shema all the way through the night, all the way up until it's now tomorrow morning. What time do the rabbis actually set?
When you can see the
right. That's for the next day. But what time do you set? What time do we set as our goal for doing Shema each night? Midnight. Right. So they're doing the same thing here. They're arguing about how much of a cushion do you need. 5 hours, and you can eat all the way up, right? And then there's a break, and then you burn. You've got,
a few minutes.
Well, about a 60-minute. You got about a 60-minute-ish, right? We got our 1/12 break. That's there. And the problem is, says Rabbi Yehuda, and indeed in general, because technically you should be able to eat up until 6. The problem is, well, the sun is just a little bit, it's kind of, or there's a lot of cloud today. It's awfully cloudy. What time do you think it is? And you don't want to get this wrong. And so they're basically arguing about how much of a cushion do you need. Everybody agrees, burn it at 6. And usually noon is pretty easy to spot. But this area here between, Rabbi Yehuda wants to give a little bit more of a cushion. He says, yeah, burn it at noon, but stop. You don't have to go burn it. It's not necessarily the 6th hour that you have to burn it. You can burn it early, that's okay. But stop eating a little earlier, right? So if this was a regular 24-hour day, equinox day, which of course it isn't, this would be noon, this would be 11, and this would be 10. And the difference is really between 10 and 11 o'clock of what time do you have to finish eating your chametz. Make sense? Nowadays, we have a little more precision. You can look up exactly what the Zaman is, the breakdown for the 12th, and calculate when the 4th hour is, when the 5th hour is, when the 6th hour is, and take care of it beautifully. But back then, they wanted more of a cushion, and we keep this cushion for our tradition today. Good. Onward. Yes, this may be a good one to. Yeah, this is a good one to finish up with. Chapter 1, Mishnah 5.
Mishnah 5. Rabbi Judah further said, 2 unfit loaves of Thanksgiving used to lie on the roof of the temple portico. As long as they lay there, all the people would eat chametz.
What? They put bread on the roof? They put bread on the roof. Right. So you're going to look at the sun and tell me what time it is? No, you're going to have an expert look at the sun and tell you what time it is. But how do you tell everyone what time it is? We don't have church towers with giant bells. So you put a couple loaves on the top. And you're going to see, we take away the loaves to let you know what time it is. So, I'd like to still eat. Is the loaf still up on the temple? And they say, no, they took it down. Don't eat it. They say the loaves are still up. Good. Have your Cheerios.
So what makes it unfit?
Okay, so what makes it unfit? Excellent question. Thank you. I kind of glossed over that. So what they're talking about here are things that are either past their prime or for whatever reason are not fit to be used in the temple itself. Because you can't deliberately waste these loaves that were made for the temple service. But if you can't use them for the temple service, you could use them for this instead. So that's what they mean by unfit. That these were loaves that should have been used in the temple, but for some reason they were disqualified, and now they have a second career as being a timepiece up on the roof.
They were the imperfect seconds that didn't make the quality control cut.
Seconds. We're talking about time. Ba-dum-bum, psh. Okay, so how do these work, right? These are like the little marionettes in those complicated town clocks in Europe, you know, that come out and do little dances every 12 hours, right? So how do these work?
When one was removed, they would keep it in suspense, neither eating nor burning it.
Right, so when the first one goes down, hands off the chametz. And then?
When both were removed, all the people began to burn their chametz.
And when the second one goes down, biur chametz time to burn the rest of the chametz that's left over. It's a good system. Yeah, I mean,
semaphore signals.
Indeed. Now, of course, if you lived outside of Jerusalem, you had, well, it's not a problem. You had to measure the time according to your own local vicinity. And that, you know, is why it's important, because, you know, the further north you go, we're in springtime. The further north you go, the longer the days are going to be than south, right? No, because we're still catching up. We haven't passed the equinox yet. So, no, we have. We've passed the equinox, yes. So the further north you go, the longer it's. Astronomy is not my subject. My point is, between north and south latitudes, your fraction of daylight is going to be different. So it's not as though you can send a message to tell someone, burn your chametz now, because their now is different than your now, depending upon the relative time. Yes?
It's not likely to be that much difference inside the land of Israel.
No, but the community at the time of the rabbis was very spread out, and there were other things that were transmitted, like the beginning of Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a new month. That was the same for everyone. But hour by hour, local time varies. Isn't that the saying, check local listings? I grew up with that. The TV always would say, check local listings. Okay, and then part two?
Part two, Rabban Gamliel says, non-sacred chametz may be eaten the whole of the 4 hours, and truma the whole of the 5 hours, and they burn them at the beginning of the 6th hour.
All right, so non-sacred chametz, that means normal chametz, the stuff that the rest of us normally eat day in, day out. Truma were special gifts that had been given to the Kohanim, had been given to the priests to be eaten by them and their family, that could only be eaten in a state of ritual purity. So if the Kohen had needed to attend to a deceased relative, he wouldn't be able to eat it until he had gone through the purification process. For example, Truma, because it was a gift, had a special status. Not just that it had to be eaten in ritual purity, but also it couldn't be deliberately wasted. And so Rabban Gamliel is saying, therefore, there was a special dispensation to eat Truma right up to noon, because you don't want to deliberately waste Truma. You should go ahead and eat that right up. And again, we've talked about this before, but it's another beautiful example. If you're stringent in one area, it makes you lenient in another. It's very hard, and in some cases absolutely impossible, to be stringent everywhere, because the board doesn't work like that. Rabban Gamliel is saying if we're too strict on when we stop eating chametz, then we are being lenient on truma. We're being disrespectful and violating the truma's special status. And that means we have to be able to eat the truma longer, because this protection for the chametz is protection. It's not that I'm breaking the mitzvah if I eat it late. It's I might break the mitzvah if I eat it late. And a don't waste the truma beats maybe eat chametz late. Because really the ending of chametz time, the don't eat any more chametz absolutely, or you're actually breaking the mitzvah, doesn't happen until nightfall, the beginning of Passover. So this is all a set of precautions anyway. And he's saying these precautions are good, everyone should follow them, but truma, that trumps this precaution. So eat the truma right up until the last advisable moment, which would be the middle of the day, the clear marker. Okay, now we're getting into the last time. We don't want to worry that I forgot to go back and clean out the truma. Take care of it at noon. Does it make sense? Interplay between one value and another value and how they have to balance and work together. Yes? Yes. Okay. We're going to continue with a little bit more about this notion of ritual purity and when you can, when you can't. But we've only got a few minutes left today, so I don't want to dive into it till we have a bit more of a run-up. So I'll see you next week. All right.
Same time?
Same time, same bat time,
Wednesday,
same bat channel.
7 p.m.
Wednesday at 7 is for the foreseeable future. I'll give you the warning for when we're having the staff meeting.